Well, gentlemen, that's about as seamless as I can make it. Did you guys happen to catch the intro when you were? Could you see it on your screen when we were playing
No.
it?
No, nothing.
Well, we are live.
I could see it, but it was a little choppy.
Great. Well, hopefully it improves on the YouTube side of things. But everyone, welcome back to Armed Crossfire with SB and Gabi. We have a guest today. But before we get to our guest, Luke, just sit tight for 2 seconds. We've got a little bit of stuff we got to go through. One of those things is our sponsors. Gabi, my shirt's in the wash. I see you got yours on today, Arm Assassin Strength Shop. And something that is going on with them is we have our contest for the home workouts for the $50 gift card from Arm Assassin for the month of April. Yeah, that's it. What'd you think of those videos I sent you?
Man, I was just looking at both of them about an hour ago, and got to give the nod to Ward's, only because it's more arm wrestling specific. But both are interesting for sure. And the other guy wasn't too weak on the bench press either. That was quite impressive.
Well, we can actually play them. That's the crazy thing. You guys want to take a look at them fast?
Yep.
I'll zip through them. Now, one of the reasons I really enjoy Ward's video is because, man, the guy is like, and Luke, weigh in on, you know what, let's introduce Luke first because we're going to get into some stuff now. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest, Luke Pulscher from South Dakota, right?
Yep.
And you are a how many time national champion?
5.
5-time national, perennial world competitor, and master level referee for the World Arm Wrestling Federation.
Yep.
All of these things are correct. Now, it's interesting that we have a WAF guy in here because I want to talk to you a little bit about IFA going forward. There's a whole lot of stuff, and Jody Williams has got questions going already, but let's go back to the home videos for Arm Assassin Strength Shop. We got Ward Drake's video, which he sent in, and can you guys see it in the corner?
Yep.
I'm going to hit play on this thing, and Ward has basically, and I've muted it, he's got an arm wrestling table and this apparatus that he has made in his kitchen. So he's doing an amazing job keeping active and doing what he's got to do during the quarantine period and probably training harder than he's ever trained. But, I mean, that's our first entry, Mr. Ward Drake. And I'll fast forward a little bit because there's a whole lot of Ward changing stuff around in here. And he's got what kind of looks like a Krasny's pulley there. What do you guys think?
I mean, that's arm wrestling 101 cable training.
Test weight.
Yeah, I mean, and that's he's resourceful as hell. Give him credit. Yeah, very industrious.
And then we've got Misel Jador. Now, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but basically his home workout entry that he submitted is a 545-pound bench press, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just silly.
And raw.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched this about 4 or 5 times.
And, of course, zero spotter.
I was going to say, you're feeling pretty confident doing that in your garage.
He's basically paused at the bottom, too. Like, that's pretty close to a regulation lift on that thing.
But if you're going to arm wrestle, you got to get rid of the wrist wraps.
True.
I disagree. Bench press does not strengthen your wrist for arm wrestling. In fact, over time, it could cause injuries and inflammation. So I believe wrapping your wrist when you do heavy presses will protect you, because it's not an exercise to strengthen your wrist. It's creating tension on the flexion, on the reverse flexion. So for me, when you're doing heavy bench, I believe in wrapping your wrist.
Well, the one thing that I would say
tell you
about
that I don't see a. Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
The one thing I will say about that is when I started benching, like to try to get to a competitive level of bench press, I was an arm wrestler for a very long time before that. And probably for the first 3 years of competitive benching, I never used wrist wraps, and I was consistently over 500 pounds. I would just grab and go. Now, when I started using wrist wraps, it became very difficult for me to transition back out of them when I decided I didn't want to do them anymore. But it really didn't seem to have any effect on my arm wrestling at all, either way.
Well, that's kind of my point. What it does is it creates this false sense of security. So I'm not a big fan of wraps anytime. But when you start, if you're a competitive arm wrestler and you need to minimize inflammation to your wrist, I think the last thing you want to do is inflict more of it when doing bench press, because bench press has no arm wrestling carryover to your hand and wrist. And if that's your main wrist training is bench press for arm wrestling, you're probably not going to be very good. Yeah. Luke, go ahead.
I was just going to say that realistically, the potential drawbacks for your body with heavy bench press versus the benefit that you'll get in any form for arm wrestling isn't worth the risk.
Oh, I 1,000% agree.
100%.
Yeah.
Shoulders, everything. It's just, and I do bench press, don't get me wrong, but I can't remember the last time I even attempted a bench above 225. Yeah. I mean, there's just no value.
Yeah, I think all your max out efforts on arm wrestling should be on the table with a competitor, with a partner. Everything else should be supporting that max effort on the table. So yeah, unless I'm doing some type of off season where I'm off the table, like right now, we're all off the table for a while. So I mean, you can max out or put more emphasis on dynamic training. But yeah, when I'm in on the table every twice a month or going to tournaments once a month, you can be sure I'm not doing heavy bench, heavy military press, heavy anything. With the exception of maybe legs. It just impedes your proper training on the arm wrestling table.
Yeah.
So we'll get back in, finish up the sponsors. We got Garage Door Guys from KC. We got Patreon members. Jordan Yoakum and Bernie Marcocho are our elite members, and alpha members. We have Zane William Nisley, Jeff Frank, and Bruce Willis. We appreciate you guys. So Luke, I mean, where do we want to begin, man? So you want to start with Jody's question?
I was going to say, Jody Williams wants to jump right into USAF and WAF and thinks that I know something.
What's up with USAF Nationals? What's the future with USA and WAF relationship? You got any information you want to share on that?
I have zero credible information. I have opinion that Joel won't have, but I don't know anything about USAF Nationals coming up that anybody else doesn't already know. As far as I know, they're not scheduled. If they are scheduled, it hasn't been announced. I got nothing. I get asked a lot. I don't know. Yes, I talked to.
Can I jump in for a second and just ask the question? USAF, is that Simon's the one that Simon would be running?
Yes.
And that would be the qualifier for WAF.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
Nope, no problem. I know I don't know any more than anybody else does in the US about where we're at there. Over the last couple of years, I have been pretty active with Simon in any way that I could to support nationals, to support helping the team to WAF, this last year I was one of the team people that could be up running protests and stuff when we were in Romania, and helping in any ways I can do there. But as far as actual setup for nationals or any of that type of info, I don't have it. I don't know. Future relations with WAF from the U.S., I don't think there are any.
Really?
No, I with what's going on currently, I just don't see enough communication with arm wrestlers in the U.S. to keep the relationship with WAF open. I think that if IFA takes place in September, which I know we'll get into, we talked about that a little bit before we jumped on. Yeah. If that takes place, I think realistically, most of your competitive United States arm wrestlers that could legitimately go overseas and compete at the WAF level will put themselves in a banned status, because I know most of them are planning on going to compete at IFA.
Will you compete at IFA, and will you referee at IFA if you're asked?
I will not compete at IFA this year. That does not mean I won't compete at IFA in the future. The main reason I'm not willing to put myself in a banned status with WAF affiliate events at this point is supposedly next year in 2021, the World Games are in Atlanta, and arm wrestling is potentially a exhibition sport. It is through the WAF organization, and I want the opportunity to be able to pull there.
Yes.
That's a wise move. But can you and I make a side bet that will never happen?
Oh, I wouldn't take that bet.
Yeah.
That's why I say it's an if.
Yeah, it's a wise
and
move.
right now, the IFA level isn't to a point yet that I really feel like I'm missing out by not competing there. If I wait another year, I'm not missing anything.
Yeah.
Although it could be the biggest tournament in the history of the world, because if everything gets cleared up miraculously by the beginning of July, we'll say, we could be looking at every arm wrestler from around the world trying to come to that world championship because they don't really have to qualify, which kind of would, let's bring up the statement that Denise made, which I kind of jumped on it a little bit, and some people jumped on me for responding to her the way I did because I suggested that it was a tad reckless, and I believe that to be true. But the statement was made that 100% IFA Worlds will take place on that date and that location, which has already been selected, which is this September in Florida. 100% was the statement. And of course, the second she posted, she had Sean Hancock hitting a like on it, of course, because he doesn't believe anything is that this is just a big hoax or whatever. But that statement seems to me like a big crystal ball kind of a statement that could lead to a whole lot more trouble for arm wrestlers than what it would have been if they had just simply said what Anders said, which is, we're trying hard, we're living for tomorrow, we're making plans, but you never know what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, I've known Denise since literally day one in the sport. My first tournament was her tournament. So, I mean, her and Leonard have really raised me in the sport. So I get where she's coming from, the ever the optimist, the let's put out good feelings, let's make this happen type of thing. I think it's a pretty bold statement the way she worded it. I don't know that I'd go so far as to call it reckless either.
No.
But I hope it goes off, if for no other reason than I know how much already her and Leonard have put into the tournament. And I want them to be successful with their endeavors, just like I want Bill Collins to be successful with his. And if Simon has a USAF event, I want him to be successful with his. I don't want any of it to suffer. So I hope it works. I think the logistics of it this year are incredibly challenging. I think it was challenging before COVID. I think it's more challenging now.
Isn't it a tad reckless, though, to tell people or encourage people to go out and buy plane tickets for a tournament that may or may not happen?
Well, okay, yeah. But, I mean, we got to look at the general arm wrestler motto. Promise me a tournament, and I'll buy whatever it takes to get there. And if you cancel it, I'll forgive you in 6 days.
Yeah.
True.
But it still makes it irresponsible. Just because you can get away with certain things or exploiting certain people doesn't make it honorable, right? But
true. I don't think Denise meant. I'm not speaking for Denise, and yes, I am defending her. I don't think Denise was coming from any position of trying to mislead me.
I can promise you that Denise did not come from any angle of malice. I know her well enough, even though she's blocked me, that her and Leonard are salt of the earth people. They are fucking salt of the earth people. I trust them as much as I trust anyone in the sport. And so I guarantee there's no malice there.
Right.
But it doesn't mean sometimes people with good intentions can make, I wouldn't say reckless, but irresponsible decisions. But her heart has always been in the right place. I don't doubt that.
See, Gabi, I can believe your guarantee that there was no malice. but I can't believe a guarantee that that tournament's going to happen.
No.
And I love Denise. I love Leonard. They are great people. When I had my incident in 2007, they were some of the first people to reach out to me, make sure I was okay. You know what? They're awesome. I just think that to make that statement is a little bit
Well,
off.
because we all know that it's conceivable that it could happen, but also we don't know the trajectory of this. Sometimes some days looks good, some days it doesn't.
That's the point. We don't know.
So to make a concrete blanket statement that this is going to happen is for some people that's exciting and bold, but in real reality, she cannot guarantee it. It has no foundation as a guarantee. Much like the Red Deer tournament. I think a lot of people are gonna be there. A lot of people are planning to go there. There's a good probability it's going to happen, but there's also a 30 to 40% chance it doesn't happen.
And Jeff Frank keeps that in mind at all times.
Yeah, just like Anders. Anders said, we're status quo. We're going forward with all the information we have, but he's not giving any certainties. No one can give any certainties at this time. No one. Politicians.
That's my issue.
I think the likelihood that the IFA World Tournament can run is very high. I think the likelihood that the IFA World's Tournament can run and have athletes get there from all over the world is low.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'm on the fence because it's not like we're going to wake up one morning and flick a switch and the United States is going to be back to normal. It's going to be a gradual kind of thing where things get slowly returned to normal and events to make sure we don't have another resurgence of COVID-19. It's going to be still some regulations. It's going to be a trickle effect of things returning to full norm. I don't think you're going to see, like we're talking about Disney World for this event.
Yeah. Let me put something in scope. Here in Quebec, or in my region, we have kind of like a state fair, but it's massive. It's almost like a smaller version of the Calgary Stampede. Ryan will know what that is. Yeah. And every year it gets anywhere from it's Labor Day weekend, so first weekend in September, about close to 1 million people come in and out of the doors. It was canceled, and a lot of people are saying, well, that's premature. It's conceivable that come August, something like that might happen, but they start planning for it. They start the logistics, getting together this month, next month, so they can't do that. So it impedes. So they're canceling things 3-4 months away. Any big gatherings are being canceled in my province 3-4 months down the road. Not to say you can't get together with families and friends in August, or even a small tournament, or even a big tournament. But when you're talking about gatherings of thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, man, that's going to be a hard sell for the next conceivably a year.
Yeah, I do hope it happens, and I would like to go.
Well, the great thing about all this is because there are no certainties one way or the other, we can be optimistic. There are some days where we see the curve is flattening, at least in my area, and there's tons of room for optimism. But there's also room for being realistic and just preparing for what could be a tough next 9-10 months when it comes to travel and competing and participation in these things.
And BL says reckless in most places. This is Florida we're talking about, though, and he's got a point. I mean, Florida did go ahead and declare WWE was an essential service, so they could continue to put on shows.
Yeah, I mean, in the South, they're still having church gatherings. They're there are some demographics that are just more or less ignoring this, and these are the demographics that will get out of it much later than we will, because of their sheer stupidity. At least, what are you going to do?
I love the way you put things.
Well, man, what do you want me to say?
No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Someone asked me if I thought it was a hoax, and I said, well, a lot of times I don't understand stuff. And when I don't understand stuff, smart people realize the step one is to realize you don't understand something. So what I do is I try to gather information from the smartest people I know, or at least if I don't know them, experts and professionals in those fields. What I don't listen to are blue-collar, Southern great people.
Blue-collar.
But just not, that's a bad term, but just non-educated, non-experts in that field. And you listen to them and you sought out their advice and you do what you think is logical. But for people to completely ignore the the advice and soon to be law, or if not already a law, I just find it's laughable. To state it's a well, of course, Luke's an American. I don't know how he feels if it's an infringement of his right and stuff like that, but for sure it's not convenient or ideal. But to say it's the government's trying to impede my freedom and it's not right, I mean, we're going through a crisis, a pandemic. Anyway.
Yeah, so Ryan and I were talking a little before you jumped on, Chris, and I kind of come down in the middle between it's very serious and we've got to be super careful, and obviously no one wants someone else to die. And world government's conspiracy to track us all through vaccine chips or whatever the hell they think Bill Gates is doing now. I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I have zero fear of getting COVID-19. Now, I'm not saying that I don't think I could get it. I just have zero fear if I did. In 90% of all cases, it prevents like mild cold and flu-like symptoms, especially if you're healthy. So now there's always outliers where a perfectly healthy person died. Perfectly healthy people die every day from something. So I don't have a fear there. Now, I'm also working my business from my basement. We only go out to the store when we need to. We don't all go to the store together. We're not going to big gatherings and groups of stuff because I don't want to inadvertently pass that along to somebody that doesn't have a good immune system. So yeah, I'm being responsible in that manner. I was joking with my wife the other day that really, self-isolation, I don't like big groups. I'm not a huge fan of people in general. This was built for me. I'm being socially responsible instead of standoffish in an ass. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
So it's, yes, you need to be careful. I think state mandated stay-at-home orders push the limit of what's reasonable for a government to tell you can and can't do. Unfortunately, you would like to rely on people being able to use common sense. And more we find fewer and fewer people have common sense. Mm-hmm. So, when you consistently behave in a manner that shows you can't be left to your own decision-making abilities, you have people step in and tell you how you need to make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just to wrap the whole arm wrestling piece of it, does anyone find it, of the COVID-19 stuff that is, do you guys find it puzzling that the IFA is optimistic that they're going to continue, but the PAL, and there's affiliations between Mazarenko and IFA, let's face it, there just is, has canceled their entire 2020 schedule?
Well, see, I hadn't heard that they'd canceled their whole 2020 schedule.
Basically, how I interpret what the statement that was made is 2020 is basically written off, so they'll start again whenever they can in 2020.
So no top 8, no nothing?
No top 8.
The difference between the two is that the IFA Worlds is an isolated event, with not much qualification. So to still assume you're going to have it is reasonable. But Igor's League is a step-by-step. It's a process.
Oh, we lost Copy.
What's that?
So start at step-by-step.
Well, yeah, Igor's League is a step-by-step process. So if you're going to cancel the first 20% of that timeline, you're pretty much done anyway. So Igor's just saying what's in all reality is going to be a full postponement of the whole season. IFA doesn't have to do that because they have one isolated event with no qualification. So I don't see any connection between the two, really, even though the two promoters are affiliated.
Fair point. And WAL has basically let it be known that they're just going to start when they can and just run the season.
And I've heard nothing from WAF on if, when, or anything that they're thinking of you.
Well, that is the puzzling thing, because when you mentioned communication between the USA and WAF as far as the WAF championships go, I haven't heard anything. Like, since this COVID-19 stuff started, WAF has not said a damn thing, as far as
They've
I'm.
basically gone dark.
Yeah. So what is going on? If anyone in the comments section has any kind of input on that, let us know. But as far as we can tell, WAF is just not showing up for work these days.
The other, to tie kind of back into arm wrestling and arm wrestling related things, one of the first questions you asked me was, would I compete IFA? Would I ref IFA? If asked. I have no plans to compete IFA at this time. If I were asked and the opportunity presented itself, yes, I would switch to reffing IFA.
But they would still ban you, wouldn't they?
My understanding is I would only be banned from reffing WAF, and I don't care.
Okay. So you have gone through the process of becoming a WAF master level referee. Is that something? I think it would translate over to IFA, but have you got any information on that?
The information that I've received, which is in no form official, is yes, I would be considered a master referee for IFA. Now, if the current IFA referee panel wanted me to test, I would be happy to do that. But realistically, the majority of my reffing that I do is through USAA. I've helped Bill Collins ref some, which would now be UAL, and then any relatively local tournament that maybe isn't affiliated but wants a decent ref, I'll go and help. And I fully expect that on a reffing level, just reffing for USAA can get me banned from WAF now, and I'm not going to give up reffing 6, 8, 10, 15 times a year for reffing once at the world level. It was a goal to make master referee. I accomplished it. Reffing at the World Championships was a bucket list event that I am so happy I've had the opportunity to do. But I'm not willing to just go to reffing one tournament a year.
Interesting. You're a very practical thinker, Luke.
So you mentioned the importance of quality reffing when we were talking about some of the things we want to talk about before. What have you seen lately that would bring that subject to mind?
Lately or always?
Always. Let's go with always.
The conversation in our sport is always, how do we make it better? How do we make it more professional? How do we make it more mainstream? How are we taken more seriously by those people that don't understand what arm wrestling is? And that comes down to professionalism on every level. And I mean, you've been to WAF more times than I have, and WAF is professional. I mean,
well,
the way the athletes act, not the WAF organization.
Well, I'm gonna say the one thing that it took a sharp downturn is when they got rid of Leonard and brought in that other doofus to be their head referee. That guy is terrible. Edward? I guess that's his name.
Yeah.
Same guy that screwed me out of $5,000 in Moldova. So I might be a little hurt over that. I don't know.
So where it really hit me the first time, I mean, it really hit me right between the eyes was 2018 Nationals in Indiana. And we're sitting at our national championships where any potential sponsor that's interested in sponsoring a national tournament could show up to watch to see what he or she might be sponsoring. And we look like a bunch of stinking hillbillies. from dirty jeans and dirty t-shirts to ball caps on backwards. And seriously, we can't put on sport pants and a decent competition shirt and look like athletes. At that level, I can see where maybe across the vastness of the United States and Canada that it's not reasonable to put a dress code in for every tournament that might take place. But if the bigger ones, come on.
We have a dress code at nationals.
Okay, we don't. And then when you start watching video of small tournaments around the country or super matches here and there that they're getting videoed, and you just look at the quality of reffing, it's not good. And I'm not critical of the ref. The ref is trying. But there's too many promoters, I think that anybody that can arm wrestle can ref.
Here's a Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think if we want to continue to make the sport better, we've got to commit to some basic tenets in sports, not arm wrestling, but sports. And you look at any sport and you have a pool of qualified referees that you bring to your events. You have stipulations for athletes to compete in those events, and you build from there. I mean, even getting down to, sports like tennis and things like that. There's set rules for those things, and we're still the Wild West.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was a AAA or unified. So you had three nationals. I don't know which one I was watching online, but I remember. But it wasn't nationals, and I remember they had two tables going, and one of the downside refs on one of the table, they just grabbed a puller who wasn't pulling. I believe it was a woman, but not credible. No ref shirt. Could you imagine a nationals where your downside ref isn't wearing an official ref jersey? And I'm like, who cares? Like, ultimately, but like you say, if you're trying to sell it to a potential sponsor, how unprofessional does that look? How chaotic does that look?
Yeah, just because you put a referee shirt on does not mean you can ref.
No, but at least that's step one of at least looking proper. Moving in the proper direction.
I don't understand any tournament, no matter how big or small, that you don't put your refs in a referee shirt.
Yeah, I mean, in Manitoba, we tend to, just the small local novice tournaments, we still want our referees to look like they're referees.
Yeah, I mean, I reached out to Rick Pickney this year and raised my hand and said, hey, I don't know who's in charge of it, but if you need a ref at the Canadian Nationals, I'm interested. Now, obviously, this year's probably not going to be the year, but I want to be able to do those things.
Well, you got a short drive to come next year because, unlike every other country, we've just basically taken our schedule and shifted it a year. So the Nationals, Winnipeg, Manitoba in 2021. And we have brought up American referees for our nationals before. Keith Michelle has been up here a number of times.
And I don't have an atlas in front of me, but I have to believe that North Dakota to Manitoba is not that far of a drive.
We border on each other.
There you go.
And South Dakota is just a little bit further.
I'm probably 15-hour drive from Winnipeg.
It's still a lot.
Maybe not quite. So not bad.
Yeah.
I can get to the southernmost point of South Dakota, I think, in about 12 hours. So,
okay. Yep. Then I'm west some. So go kitty corner across there, and it's not a bad drive.
A promoter in I don't know if it was North or South Dakota contacted me a couple months ago for a potential 154 or 176 or 165 left arm round robin, and he's like, you should drive down $500 for first place, and I'm like 23-hour drive, 24-hour drive, and he's like, yeah, but you could win the $500. It's like, dude, you need a calculator. I mean, it's not a terrible deal if you live close, but that's a ways to go.
Yeah.
Now, Luke, are you are also putting on an event? What was that event that Cody and I were going to pull at?
So it's the South Dakota State Championships. Takes place in August every year. This year, it's scheduled for August 22nd. We're hoping that it goes off, but time will tell. It's part of a big fair. So if the fair deems that it's not going to take place, my tournament won't take place because the fair is the sponsor. They've been a great sponsor. Central States Fair is the fair that runs it. They give us a nice location. They give us some prize money. They allow me to go out and get some other sponsors that don't conflict with who they've got on the fairgrounds to add to prize money. We've had last year Cody pulled Jeff Dave there. We've had a couple other super matches while we're there. This last year was kind of interesting. We had in the 176 class, and actually 187 class is what we run at that tournament. In that class, we had Roman Gromov, Corey Miller, Devin Bear, Bob Brown, and myself. In realistically, middle of nowhere, South Dakota, we've got 5 guys that around 180 can go to any tournament in North America and place, and all 5 of them are there, which is really great from a talent perspective. But in the world of social media and Facebook and everything, when you start seeing those names pop up, people start going, well, geez, I can't win, I won't go. Which I don't understand that mentality even a little bit, but it's very prevalent in our sport anymore. So yeah, it's not a huge tournament, but boy, we get some talent.
See, when I was starting, that would have been a dream come true for me to show up and have like a field, not that they would be my class, but a field similar to that in the super heavyweights, because you always should be hunting.
Yeah, I mean, how do you know where you're at if you don't go pull the guys that are, in theory better than you?
Yeah. So who placed first out of those 5 guys?
Corey Miller.
Where the hell is Corey Miller lately? Like, he should be in World Arm Wrestling League or something.
I train with Corey. Corey is 3 hours away from me, just a little more. So my primary training partners are Corey Miller and AJ Henson. So I've got great guys to train with. The drawback is that it's 2 to 3 hours for me to get to practice, so it's certainly not weekly, but it's usually once or twice a month. Corey's training. He's training hard. He's got some goals. I think if he was offered an opportunity in WAL, he'd probably take it. But I don't know that he's been offered it. It's not been a direct offer, that's for sure. It's been talked about and stuff, from my understanding, but no real reaching out. And I don't know why that is. I don't quite understand what it takes to get into WAL. It's certainly not just talent. It's how marketable are you and all those things. And
it's odd because Corey has a nickname. He has one of the most popular nicknames in the sport. He's charismatic. He's explosive on the table. He screams. He's colorful. And when you look at different weight classes, different tiers over the last 10 years, some guys funnel in and out. Some guys peak and, stuff like that. I got to say that Corey, 0 to 176 right-handed in the last decade is number 1 in North America.
Right there.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
well,
he's not number 1. He's been in the top 3 the entire time.
And if you look at consistency, leagues pulled, you can say Crazy George, but that's an anomaly in terms of his style. But Corey takes losses, but does any 176er have more wins? I remember watching a tournament where he pulled 10 classes, and this was a cash tournament. I believe it was in one of Bill Collins' tournament. I believe it was in Seattle. Jody Williams was there. It was maybe Portland, Northern California, something like that. And he beat some tier 3 heavyweights. And I think he ended up taking like 8 first place in 2 seconds. Like, what a stud. Like, even his left arm. Like, what a – and he looks unassuming. If you saw him, like, no way that guy arm wrestles. And he's quiet, but on the table, he's vicious. He's strong in a hook. He's the only guy to ever. I hooked him at UAL 6 or 7 in Chicago. I was able to hook his left, and he pulled me out of a hook, which is the only time anyone under 190, 200 ever did that to me. Tremendous rotation, tremendous wrist.
His table IQ is insane.
Yeah, there's nothing compares to it. I remember having a guy train with me, and he says, he started asking me questions. He was a tall, lanky guy that liked to top roll. And I said, listen, dude, I'm not the guy you should be talking to. Contact Corey Miller. Because Corey Miller, for me, since we're talking about him, a lot of guys come into the sport and they have physical gifts and they have to learn to arm wrestle. I believe from what I heard and what I saw, Corey Miller came into the sport with no strength. He had to become quick, he had to become smart, and the strength came over time. But he had success in the first couple of years, and I think the first couple of years for him was tough. I don't think it was he started winning right out of the gates. So he crafted his trade, and highly intelligent guy, and then the strength came afterwards. So that's the advice I give to anyone that comes into the sport without genetic gifts. Follow that template, because without genetic gifts, he turned himself into arguably one of the best 176ers of all time.
I was at the tournaments where Corey started. He was coming to tournaments his dad was bringing him because he couldn't get in the bar on his own. And he was entering every class he could. He was taking a lot of wins. He was taking a lot of losses. I can remember beating Corey. That's been a long damn time ago.
Yeah.
I finally feel now that I'm getting closer to being in a match with Corey. Not beating. I feel like the potential is there for me to get a win on Corey. If he misses something and I get it right, I don't see two of them in a row in the near future. But it's easy to start to get that confidence when you train with a guy too. You get to know how they feel. You're on the table with them. And the problem is, the way I currently arm wrestle is because of Corey and AJ. They've taken what I was good at and helped me refine it. And which means that Corey knows exactly what I'm going to do on the table. And Corey knows exactly what he has to do to counter it. It's just Kenny, and 9 times out of 10 or more, yeah, he can. Now, back to Corey and Wall, I think the other problem there is, you're right, he's got a name, he's got recognition. It's really hard to bring a brand new guy into the league that's going to stomp on your champion.
That's a bold statement, but I think
and I'll make it all day. And if Neil Pickup watches this, because I know Neil doesn't pick the competitors, but he has a say, Corey Miller will stomp Sam Harris.
Wow. You know what? Hard for me to argue.
Well, I don't know about stomp, but if Corey's trained and motivated and comes in peak form, he's favored. But I mean, Sam Harris.
And Corey won't take that match unless he's trained, motivated, and in peak form.
Right.
He's not dumb.
And that's another thing about Corey. He's a professional, right? Everything he does is professional, and the way he conducts himself with arm wrestling and promoters. But he'd be favored against anyone. I don't know if I'd favor him with Tony Kotowski, because Tony's 197 coming down to 176 or 65, and that's a big dude. But I still don't say that Corey couldn't win it. But that's maybe the only 176er, and he's not technically really a walk around 176er, that I would not have Corey favored in.
Yeah, and even that, and I have never touched Tony's hand. I don't know what he feels like. I know from everything I see, Kotowski is an absolute beast. But I watch Corey pull in the 198 category against beasts all the time. I ref the matches. I watch him take wins, and I watch him take guys and stand them up just dead center of the table, even when he loses. And I'm not saying he walks through Tony, but it's a match.
Oh, for sure.
Every day.
There's no one on earth under 176 that Corey cannot present a match to. He's fucking awesome. I'm just not sure if I'd favor him against Tony, but he's in every. I mean, you cannot you cannot count him out. That's for sure.
Well, that's if Tony can make that weight.
Yeah, I think we're done seeing Tony at 165. As he gets older, it's going to be his last attempt or last failed attempt was, I think, the last time, and he'd even admit it, that he'll try to make 165.
Yeah.
And
AJ Henson,
Tony's got an injury he's got to get through first.
Yeah.
You mentioned AJ Henson. I mean, there's a guy that's possibly one of the most underrated guys in all of the United States, who I only heard of because he started beating Derek Penner at tournaments he was going to, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah, AJ needs to get out more, away from home, more table time in big tournaments. His head will get to him once in a while in a big tournament. He's not as comfortable. Now that everything's being postponed and jockeyed around, I really want to see AJ in that Cock of the Walk tournament that they're putting on the East Coast.
Yeah.
I don't know that I put AJ as a favorite to win that, but there again, talk about turning some heads and having a bunch of people go, whoa, wait a minute, who is this guy?
Yeah, he's also left dominant though, and that Cock of the Walk thing is right-handed. But AJ,
Yeah, he does. He's left dominant, but his right is just fine.
Okay. I remember when I did the rankings, Corey contacted me and saying you have to bring AJ higher on the left, 240. I think it was a 242 or 225. And I did some research, and he had wins over Chris Chandler that year. What a fucking stud left-handed under 225. Maybe even under 98. Yeah.
And AJ's walking around now at about 215.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a good weight.
And that's a guy that's built himself up from starting in the sport at 176. And where like Ryan and myself, and I guess I don't really know what you do, Chris, other than I think it's factory type work, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, like Ryan and I, we have to go to the gym because we don't have physical jobs.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Henson builds fence in the mountains for a living.
Well, look at his build. He's got thick, dense wrists, a big hand. I mean, he looks like someone that works hard physically.
Now, what's crazy is AJ has a brother named Clint. Clint arm wrestles around a little bit. Never really had any desire to get into tournament arm wrestling. We show up over there, and Clint will come in out of the blue and walk into arm wrestling practice and stand AJ up in the center of the table.
Wow.
It's sick. It is just wrong. He's got that, how John will get that weird, Brezink will get that just a little bit of weird pronation where you just can't pull against it, Ryan?
Yep.
Clint has that naturally.
I love how you brought that. Yeah, I sure do know how John can do that, and then it becomes very difficult to pull against.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Corey not getting his nod, and then we were kind of throwing some ideas around there, talking about how social media has helped or hurt the sport. I mean, that's probably a good segue into that, because Corey is nowhere to be seen on any of these channels. So how do you think social media has affected the sport of arm wrestling?
I think it has helped it become more viewed as a mainstream sport and not a barroom activity. I think it's brought it to a broader audience with the introduction of people like Juji Mufu and Eddie Hall giving arm wrestling a nod as a strength sport, and different things like that are phenomenal for us. Now on the tournament side of things, I think in a lot of ways it's hurt the sport, because not everybody's wired like us where they look at a tournament and go, yeah, I want to go there to see where I'm at with those guys. A lot of guys really don't like to lose. And it was one thing when you took a loss 10 years ago and a few people heard about it, and maybe if it was a really bad loss, a couple dozen people heard about it. But now you take a loss and everybody knows about it instantly because it's on Facebook right now. And I think that's hurt. I think there's still the top level guys. So we'll go with Chris's tiers. So a lot of your tier 3 and up guys that are still guys that want to go out and see where they're at and prove themselves. But then your bottom half tier 3 and lower guys they're scared to put themselves out there.
Mm-hmm. Also, I think you make a good point, because maybe when I got in the sport and there were flyers, you took your chance. It was a close tournament or whatever. It's a tournament you targeted and you went, and there's really no way to know the roster of people that would be there, although you could have a rough idea. Now, when there's you could see, holy shit, I can't beat this guy. And like you said, a ton of tier 2s are saying, you know what, I'm just going to stay home and watch the live feed. That's another thing that's good and bad is live feed. Hey, anyone going to post live Facebook video of this tournament? Okay, great. Sit back and watch it. 10 years ago, I want to see these guys pull. I want to see the super match. I'm going to have to get in my car and go. So that is another drawback of social media, although ultimately it's good stuff. But yeah.
The other thing it does is it makes it, excuse me, it can make it hard to get a match. So, there's a lot of guys on the list that I want a shot at. But there's a few of them that I've tried to get some matches set up with in the last year or two, where they haven't been overly interested in the match because, you know, if they win, they were really expected to. But if I win, that's a problem, you know, and I'm a threat. You know, I'm probably not the favorite in the match, but I'm definitely a threat. And so trying to work your way up the ladder now is harder.
Yeah.
That's why I was really excited for my match with Bill Lodgton. You know, he was super excited to take the match with me. He's a guy that if I would have won, would have gotten me some pretty good accolades and made it a little bit easier to get that next match. But hopefully he's watching because he knows he's on my radar. I want another shot at Jamie Sheldon. Bad. I got to pull Jamie last year at Nationals. We went 1-2 in the 187 Open category. He took first. The first start, he false started right into my hook, and we were going right back to my side of the table in the pin pad when Bill Collins stopped the match for the false start. Now, Jamie, being the athlete that he is, didn't let me get there again. He did what he needed to do, and he did it fantastic. And he did it twice, which is what he needed to do. He was on the B side of the bracket. Now, do I think that just because I get Jamie on the table, I'm going to beat him? Nope, but I know it's possible. I felt it. I know it's possible, and I want that match. But that's not a great match for Jamie. He beats me. He should have beat me. If I beat him,
nothing to win. Yeah.
Yeah.
So nothing to win, which is why in your situation it's unfortunate, but you have to present money to them, maybe even guaranteed money. So it's frustrating on your end. But yeah, like you said, he has nothing to win. He has nothing to gain other than maybe money. And unfortunately, you're gonna have to put that up. So it's not ideal.
And my plan this year, which got shot all to hell with COVID, was to just start hunting some of these guys down in a tournament format.
Nice.
Old school. You know, when there's no tournaments, that gets a little tougher. And, you know, some of the guys that I want matches with, like Jamie won't duck me in a tournament. He's way too good of an athlete. He's way too professional. So he's not going to duck me by any means, but he's also not going to go out of his way to give me a one-on-one challenge match either. And I respect that. I get it.
Yeah. And plus we're in an environment where the league probably doesn't want him taking a whole bunch of challenge matches or possibly even pulling in tournament format. But you South Dakota guys, man, like you got a group down there that like yourself, Corey, and AJ are right there. And I guess you got to go hunting.
Yep.
That or you start up a whole bunch of social media stuff that's goes viral.
Yeah, I'll go the Ryan Bowden match where I just talk myself into matches.
Well, yeah,
it's a skill, man. It's a skill.
Yeah, and he's got it. Good for him.
Yeah. You guys want to talk training a little bit?
I just got a question for Luke. Two questions. One is maybe you're what, mid-40s, late 40s?
45.
45, okay. Man, if I recollect that maybe 6, 7 years ago, someone presented a super match with your name tied to it as you were a hook dominant puller. And I said to myself, nothing in it for me. He doesn't have, there's nothing, he wasn't on the rankings. You weren't anywhere on the radar. Maybe you were 38, 39. And then lately I'm thinking to myself, I don't think I could touch your right. Maybe left, but you're right dominant, I'm left dominant. But I think you just destroy my right. And I'm thinking from 40 to 45, and I'm not assuming you took anything or you're on TRT, but did you do anything in training? Did you become more serious? Because what happened? Because in my mind, you jumped a tier in the last 5 years, which isn't overly common in your 40s.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can tell you exactly what I did. When I was 40 years old, or when I was 39 years old, I weighed 245 pounds.
Oh, wow.
My entire arm wrestling career up until 5 years ago, I pulled heavies and super heavies. I had been over 200 pounds since the 7th grade. I was a short, fat kid growing up. Okay. I got into powerlifting not because I had a desire to power lift, but because I wanted to get stronger than everybody else so they'd quit picking on me. And I fell in love with strength. And then I found arm wrestling, and I was good at it. I had some natural tendencies towards arm wrestling. And I was, relatively competitive in my early years at those heavy weights. And then, a world title is on my list. I really want a world title. And I knew that was not going to happen at 240, because at 240 guys are 6'3" and cut out of stone. I'm 5'9" and fat as shit. That year, there's several things going on in our life, and some stuff that we were dealing with. And one of the things that I decided I could control was my nutrition. So I fixed my nutrition. I dropped about 70 pounds in 8 months, and, within a reasonable fluctuation, have kept it off now for 5 years. I upped my training during that time because I was losing the weight. I was getting more and more competitive, just naturally, because I was already strong. I kept my strength, got my strength better. So really, what happened was I put myself in the right weight class, and I upped my training.
Yeah, it makes sense. Second question is, I think one of the coolest things I ever witnessed in the sport, and Ryan is an example of this, is when a father introduces their child to arm wrestling and they bond over it. Does your son arm wrestle? Does he still arm wrestle?
Yeah, he does. So in would have been 2017, I took him to Lake Tahoe Nationals. He competed in the 18 and under and won a national title. That was also my first national title. I won the 198 Masters, and then the next day I won the 187 Open. So I stepped off the stage after my match in the Masters for the Open class. The Open class ran the day before Masters. Okay. And my 17-year-old son was standing right there and picked me up off the ground and gave me a hug. And I'm like, dude, put me down. We're supposed to be tough. And then he continued to work hard. So I took him with me to Budapest for Worlds. And he finished 10th in the world in the 18 and under. 165, I think. I'd have to look. And I finished 10th in the world in the 176 Masters. So we had a pretty good year that year. The next couple of years, he started college, so he hasn't been able to take the time to go to Worlds and stuff. He's going to school now in my basement because of COVID, but he was going to school at Idaho State University, which is in Pocatello, Idaho. And Kevin Butts lives in Pocatello, Idaho. And Kevin Butts has a group of guys that train once or twice a week. And Wyatt has been training with them for the last 8 months. And he is a natural top roller. And that's not something I have really been able to teach him. Because I would love to top roll with my right. It doesn't do it well. My left, I actually top roll with my left. Yeah, Chris, you're right. You can kill me left-handed. My left isn't great. And I know yours is. But now when I get on the Wyatt, which is kind of nice, he's here. So I do have a training partner, and we're getting on the table once or twice a day for 15, 20 minutes every day. And I'll tell you what, he's 160 pounds, 20 years old, almost 21, of walking testosterone. And I'm starting to see the future where he could take a match off me. There's part of me that I love it, and there's part of me that I hate it. I don't want to give up the loss, but I'm anxious for him to get there.
Nice.
Did you know that Chris Gabe used to be 225 pounds?
I did not.
Here's a picture.
Yeah. 1997, 98, 99. I got up to about 230. And that was natural. I was just ate a lot and my body just responded well. Man, I always say that anything I take synthetically now will never match who I was when my natural levels were high, 18 to 30. Give me back my natural levels any day over any synthetic product I can get on the market. People disagree with that, but I don't know. Strength-wise in the gym, and I've taken stuff, nothing compares in terms of recovery, anything to me in my early 20s. And that's with limited knowledge of nutrition. That's just eating Pop-Tarts and raisin bread all day and fish sticks. I didn't know anything about anything,
Right.
and I just got as strong as I needed to get. If I wanted to bench 400, I benched 400. If I wanted to do dips with 5 plates around my waist, that's what I did. I progressively made my way to that. But anything I wanted to get strength-wise, I attained on shitty nutrition. If I had the knowledge I have now, of course, anyone in their 40s can say that. In the body I had when I was 23, it's a bad dude, but we can all say that.
Yeah, I can tell you that I never in my life expected that I could take off my shirt and have abs, let alone in my 40s. But I changed how I train. I only train for arm wrestling now. Before that, I always did more of a well-rounded workout routine, I guess. And I really just got focused on the sport, and then really started to capitalize on Corey and AJ. Here this last year, probably a little over a year ago, we changed how I hook. And it's made night and day differences. I wouldn't be there at all without Corey and AJ and Chris Chandler and Devin Bear, and I mean those guys have been who I grew up in the sport with.
On a technical standpoint, I remember 3 years ago after I beat Justin Grant right-handed in a super match. I think he was either having a super match with you or he was preparing to pull you at Worlds in the masterclass. And he sent me videos of you pulling, and he asked me to analyze your hook. And it's not that unsimilar to mine, although you seem to have more pronation and more leverage in your hook. But I tried to help him in preparing his training for you. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if you guys ever pulled or met in that tournament or even had a super match. But I remember him and I going back and forth for about a week on analyzing your hook and your training.
Did you say Josh Grant?
Yeah, Justin Grant. Is it Josh?
Justin or Josh?
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah.
Josh. Yeah, from Boston?
Yep.
Yeah, we pulled again in the 98 Masters in California last fall. And he took second to me in the Masters.
There you go. Did he give you anything with his hand? Or did you have to, or was it just hook and pin? Easy, eh? Yeah.
I love Josh. He's got a tremendous top roll. Whatever it is exactly that I do, it doesn't work well for him. I don't know that I'm doing something specifically to stop Josh from doing what he wants to do, but he can't get outside of my hook, and once he's there, he just simply doesn't have the power to go with me.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you dedicate training to evasion, referring to top rollers. When they can't evade the way they want, they get fucked. It's like, learn how to pull. Like, I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So I don't doubt after beating him and watching your progression, I'm not surprised that you beat him easy. He's a great guy, though. I respect the shit.
Yeah.
Highly
great
intelligent.
guy, love Josh. Great puller. Just our styles contradict each other so badly, and then whether you like it or not, arm wrestling is a strength sport.
Yeah,
strongest guy's typically going to win.
Yeah, but I see a lot of parallels between him and John Brown in terms of intelligence and culture and stuff like that. But he's a great guy. Yeah.
I got to ask you the question, Luke. We usually kind of talk not so kindly about things like grippers, and we kind of poke away at wrist curls and stuff like that. What are some of the things that you've been seeing from people that you think might not have any value at all?
Almost
don't say trolling. Don't say trolling.
Sure. Yeah.
I was going to say almost anything posted on Facebook has very little value.
Oh my God, there's lots of good stuff out there. But you're talking about that training page specifically?
Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time on there because I just don't have a lot of time to spend, but I haven't checked out some of the things lately.
I'm not going to call anybody out specifically, but I got a text message the other day from Corey Miller that said, "You got to go look at this stupid ass training video." And I did. And I'm like, just breathe. It's fine.
God, I hope it wasn't. Yeah.
That wasn't it. It was Herman Stevens. That guy don't know nothing. No,
So any movements in particular that they were doing that would just be completely something you should throw away? And did the people that moderate the page actually say anything like you could better spend your time doing this?
yeah, I didn't go back to the post enough to know if it got any good feedback. I watched it. It was ugly enough that I found the need to comment myself that's worthless, basically. I think I put it a little bit more politely than that, and got a couple of questions. Well, why would you say that? What they were doing was basically a rolling thunder deadlift in a bent over your leg hook, just trying to move it off the ground type of thing.
Oh,
Which just, I guess you could maybe draw a correlation to hand and wrist stability and maybe locking your arm and being able to move some weight. And those are huge maybes. My argument was their bodies were so contorted and out of position that they were simply begging to hurt something.
so they basically did the Vavoda curl from Pulling John.
More or less, yeah.
Okay.
I find
Get yourself all bent over in a question mark and put your hand on your knee and put copious amounts of weight there and then make the weight jingle and think you did something.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
I think, when we talk training, there's, I don't know how many handles there are now for sale and how many handles that somebody has built themselves, hundreds and hundreds at this point of this is the handle that's going to turn you into a champion arm wrestler. And you got to do this and you got to do this. I think we try to overcomplicate things. I mean, there's some very basic movements that correlate so well to arm wrestling that, and yes, I use some handles and I have, we talked, I've got the Krasny deal strapped down on my table. I love it. I've got an old Chuck Norris Total Gym that I use for some movements that are great. But there's just some simple things that I think get overlooked. If you, hand and wrist strength, figure out a way to do some fat grip farmer walks. It's hard to argue that when you look at strongman, that a fat grip farmer walk isn't going to improve your hand and wrist strength. For the love of God, do a damn pull-up.
You mentioned the Total Gym, and I got to tell a quick story before we go off the air because I think you guys will appreciate it. Travis Bajents and I, years and years and years ago, used to go back and forth a lot. And I had a friend that worked for FedEx, and he was training with me for arm wrestling, and he was one of the complaint department guys at FedEx. And it was when the Total Gym was getting really big, selling millions of these things. And he was getting these complaint calls from angry people wondering where the hell their Total Gym was. And he would put them on hold and he would transfer them to Travis Bajent's phone number. And then I phoned Travis one day. He goes, Ryan, oh my God, I've been getting some weird phone calls lately. So that's my Total Gym story with Travis. I don't think he knows that one to this day, but
I don't know if you've ever been on a Total Gym, but
nope.
I think you're gonna put it might not work well for you, Ryan. But an average size human, I don't know that there's a better at home piece of workout equipment for just your average person to be able to do fitness related movements at home than a Total Gym. Now, if you're into serious strength and stuff like that, no. But just overall fitness and the ability to build strength with a piece of at home equipment, the Total Gym is really a pretty good piece of equipment. I don't use mine in any of those ways. I sit on the front corner of it, I have a strap to my arm and move it like that and try pronation and different stuff like that on it. I'm moving it at 2 or 3 inches at a time is all, but it's an interesting piece of equipment.
As long as you can train the gentleman's form of arm wrestling, which is the top roll, and not the caveman form, which is
I've been training my top roll on my total gym. So I take my martial arts belt, and I wrap it around my hand and up through my thumb, and then I lock, and then I pull myself up, and I work that movement, not with any desire to top roll on the table, but simply the belief that the stronger my hand and wrist get, the more dominant my hook is.
Gotcha. Gobby wants to say something,
No,
and we should.
home gym, junk. I'll leave it at that. Fucking. If your home gym's your go-to training, and there's no fucking way you're ever going to hit your potential as an athlete in any respect.
I train.
You take your home gym. You give me a 120-pound slam ball. That's it. That's all I have. I'll produce a stronger athlete with that than you will with the home gym. Functional strength.
I made a very specific caveat for people trying to get better fitness, not athletes.
I stand corrected. I overspeculated.
You're talking about like the out of the box kind of home gym, not like my home gym, which has got all kinds of stuff.
Well, your home gym isn't the area. Yeah, but you have a lot of stuff going on there. That's different. Just not a big fan. I'm not saying home gym. I have a home gym. My home gym is fucking amazing. I'll put my home gym up against any gym on earth in terms of to build functional strength. But when we're talking about those universal gyms that hotels have, come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's pretty tough to get a workout there. You can do it.
You can do it with anything. I mean, I see people on social media saying, "Well, I'm gaining weight. I can't go to the gym." Fucking run, push-ups, sit-ups. It's getting, no matter where you live, the weather is getting decent. So
Stop
I mean,
putting shit in your mouth.
exactly that too, right? And you know more than anyone the value of proper nutrition, regardless of what your objectives are in life, physical objectives. So nothing's stopping you from eating right, being active. Yeah, for sure. I have a 25-foot rope on a tree outside that I put about 3 weeks ago, and I go up there every other day. I still say if I can only pick one thing, or there's a few things I might pick, but climbing a rope, a 3-inch rope, has to be one of the most ideal things for arm wrestling. If I can only pick one thing, that would be one of them. Hand, arm, tendons, elbow, biceps, lat. It hits everything. Functional strength, core strength, fitness.
It doesn't take you very long to climb.
No, and you can kick the living shit out of yourself in 15 minutes. You take 30-second intervals to rest. You go up and down, 15 rep sets, whatever. You're fucking done. Your forearms, your core, your lat, your biceps, your back, your traps, a lot of things. I mean, I'll take that over a Holiday Inn Universal Gym any day.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had to say that I could only do one workout, it would be a pull-up bar.
Most overrated, I don't like the pull-up bar. Maybe if you take the pull-up bar and you hold yourself in a position, you have a static benefit. But what's the advantage of the pull-up? Let's break down the pull-up to arm wrestling. Break it down for me. What's the advantage of increasing your pull-up strength for the table?
Keeps all angles tight.
Not necessarily.
All vectors.
It's a full motion.
Thank you.
It's a.
I think it comes down to, if you're doing a standard chin up, an overhand pull up, if you're doing neutral grip, if you work it like you do any other exercise with progressive weight and overload and things like that, you're gonna tie in the connections. Because if you think of arm wrestling as, let me get the camera right, the connection here to be able to hold this and move it. I mean, that's arm wrestling. It's not this and it's not this. You can build that connection on a pull-up bar as good as you can anywhere else.
I disagree, and I'll bring you. I'll present the hypothetical. You can only have 2 exercises: your pull-up, chin-up deal, or a 2.5-inch dumbbell handle with anywhere from 80 to 140 pounds on a preacher bench, where you can drive your elbow in. One arm is always stronger than the other, so you take your dominant arm and you come over it, and you much like a Devin Lorrat or even a hammer curl. You're telling me where you can totally control every vector, every angle to simulate how you pull. You're telling me you still take the pull-up?
I would.
If I could have additional weight to add to my body weight on the pull-up, yep.
Crazy motherfuckers.
I would do it because it's a compound movement. It's going to be more effective to keep all of the muscle groups that tie into one another.
You can build more overall body power than you can in just one singular movement.
Well, and that's your misconception. There is more body parts coming into play. And a lot of people say, well, it's great for my lat. The lat does not play a part in arm wrestling. You've never arm wrestled or gotten big hook matches and say, boy, the next day my lats are fired up. Front delts, bicep, forearm. The lats are a secondary supportive network, and they're rarely something that needs to be isolated or focused on. And a pull-up is 80% lat, 30% bicep. I'm not saying it doesn't have a carryover. I'm just saying.
I would disagree with you there that if you're doing pull-ups with the idea of arm wrestling in mind, and you're still getting 80% of the work in your lat, you're simply doing it wrong.
Okay, you're not wrong, but the only exception in there is that if you're strong enough, because I think if you can do a one-arm chin-up, or even more specifically a one-arm static hold on a chin-up bar, that is fucking awesome. That is incredible. You can own the center of the arm wrestling table if you can do that. Or more specifically, when we saw Liliev do that with a 40-pound dumbbell in his left hand and holding himself with the right, that carryover is magical, because there's so much tension in your inner elbow and the bicep, and you're focusing on one half of your body mainly. But a double arm chin up, a double arm pull up, man, I don't ever focus on that. If I do, it's for dynamically working my back muscles. Anyway, but that's me. Yeah.
Yep. I would, if I could have my pull-up set up the way I use it. And I do tons and tons and tons of pull-ups. I do pull-ups every day, but I do a specific routine with pull-ups once a week where there's added weight, certain hand angles, fat grips. I'll go up where you go up and hold and then go in and out instead of up and down. That builds connection through your elbow. Trust me.
Yeah, there is some. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, you're a smart dude. I respect that.
No, I'm not going to say that it's going to make me 44% stronger. Isn't that the gauge now that we've got to figure out how to get 44% stronger?
I had somebody, I get these questions often, and it's the type of question where, why can't I control you on the table? Because I think I can lift more than you in a very specific, and they're not wording it like this, but this is how I'm interpreting it, is I think I can outlift you in a very specific plane of movement. And my response is because I'm attacking you from 5 different angles, and that plane doesn't matter anymore.
Well, you've been to the Arnold, correct, Ryan?
I have.
Have you spent any time after day 2 at the booth letting just people in the fitness expo pull on your arm?
No, because I'm usually running around trying to get free samples of everything.
Okay.
And pictures with all my favorite professional wrestlers and bodybuilders.
Right? At the first time it happened was at a tournament in Texas at the Ronnie Coleman Bodybuilding Expo, I think. And we were setting up, and a couple of great big guys, bodybuilder type guys, came over, were asking questions and stuff. And one guy made the comment, he's like, "You must be really glad that guys like me don't enter." I'm like, "Why is that?" He says, "Well, we're obviously so much stronger than you." I said, "Let me show you something." And so we got him on the table, and as just ease in, set in there, and then when I tell you, you just go ahead and pull as hard as you want. He's like, "Okay." So I put him where I locked, nice and solid, and I said, "Okay, just pull." And all of a sudden, his buddy's like, "Oh my God, get my phone!" And he's videoing because he got this monster, specimen, and me just sitting there letting him pull on my arm, and he looks up and he's like, "Okay, yeah, I didn't get it." There's just so many people that don't understand sport-specific strength.
Yeah.
I remember I used to train with a national champion at 132, Mark Vachon. And when he first started training with me, he was about 125. And after about 4 or 5 months of training, we went to a GNC once on the way to a practice. And there were 3 big, guys almost the size of Ryan, football players. And one guy was behind the desk and behind the counter, and 2 others were his buddies. And I wanted to get some bars and some protein powder. And I said, "Hey, My buddy here, you are the bigger of the three. I said, you arm wrestle him. If you win, I'll pay double. Whatever I'm purchasing was like $60. I'll give you $120 for the $60 worth of product. But if you lose and my buddy wins, 120-pound guy, I get it all for free. And they started laughing. They said, deal. He just fucking stonewalled them and laughed and pinned him. Walked out of there with $60 of free product. And let me tell you, they were fucking confused. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you take the ultimate example is Hafthor and Devon. I mean, look what happened. That the guy that was literally the world's strongest man, and you could have taken Devon out of the equation and put, like, Gabi, you would have made him look the same.
And, well, I don't know, because I go into him and he would have been able to access all his shoulder and everything, but yeah, I still would have made it a match, even if he would have beaten me.
Take Schoolboy, who looks very unassuming, and you throw him against Larry Wheels, and it's pretty one-sided. It's just that people don't get it.
No.
Or you look at, at a little bit different angle in our sport. Look at Tim Lewis. Tim Lewis has got a world-class bench press. He's an average to above average arm wrestler. He's put his focus into bench. He likes to arm wrestle. His focus is in training his bench.
He's got one very good position.
He has a position. He has a strong position.
Yep.
Yes.
He's a perfect example of a bicep-driven hook puller. His hook is driven off the bicep, and once he locks his bicep, he uses his weight, and he slowly comes down. The difference between him and when I beat him, or the difference between him and a more refined hook puller, is the elbow. He never took the time, or he never committed enough to arm wrestling to develop that inner elbow where you can just drive your elbow right inside, stop a match and grind. Because if he did, he would be much, much better, because his hook is very simple, which also tells you how fucking strong he is, because his simple hook has beaten has held up some big names. If he stops the match versus almost anyone, if they can't flop his wrist, he can get in the match, you're usually in trouble for a while. So this testament to his dynamic bicep strength and his static bicep strength as well. It's just too bad he never developed that elbow.
Yep. So, Chris, have you pulled Mike West?
No, man. I'm a big Mike West fan. Met him a couple times in 2005, 6, 7, 8. Indiana, right? From Indiana. Great guy. 2 weight classes above me, right? Dominant. And I've always followed him because he's a hook guy. Eric Wolf, Mike West. I always especially when I got into the sport, I loved following the dominant hook pullers that just needed to stop a match and get it in the hook to become a viable threat.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to pull Mike twice. The first time I got through him relatively easy. I was on my side of the table. I had better position. It worked out well. The second time was this last fall at Bob Brown's tournament in Salt Lake. And Mike hit me quicker out of the gate and got me on his side of the table, where he gets that real comfortable kind of fat hook. And boy, I tell you what, I came out of the match on top, but boy, what a chess match. To have to get around in the right angle and work that position the guy, talk about an incredible locking hook where he can just impressive.
And we always talk about the refinements of top rolling and the intricacies, but really hooking is an art. And a lot of times I see two guys in the middle of the table on a hook, and generally the guy that's a little bit more patient, not willing to make an offensive surge, and making those small later adjustments usually wins. I love watching long hook battles where, there's just one guy being a little bit more patient, waiting for one guy to make a small little mistake, and we see it often. Patience is a huge aspect of hook pulling.
Well, and anybody that thinks that hook is just power and it doesn't take any technique doesn't know how to hook.
No.
Well, hooking is like finger painting, whereas top rolling is like painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel.
So what you're saying, Ryan, is basically, most people could develop a powerful hook where there's like 3 people in the world that could actually come out with a good top roll. The rest of them are just chumps.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the smartest thing I've ever heard come out of Joey Costello's mouth was in my first year. I met him at a tournament. I don't know if he was competing or reffing, and he told me we were talking about how I should develop a top roll. And I said, man, top rolling stuff, I can't do it. He says, any asshole can top roll, learn how to top roll, but learning how to properly hook, that's tricky. And he's not wrong. Yeah.
Well, no, he isn't wrong. And credit to hook pullers, which I am slowly becoming one in my later years, which is probably the opposite of what would make more sense, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
Wasn't the general consensus as you get older and put more trauma on your arm that you just transition from being a top roller to a king's boot?
Yeah.
Hell no.
Or you know, the hook is a testosterone-driven move. It brings all the major muscle groups into play. So as your test levels decrease, it almost makes sense that you would develop a top roll to stay away from your weakening parts. Anyway, which kind of tells you why
fair
hooking
enough.
is more down. Yeah.
All right, gents. Well, we should put a bow on this. We've gone considerably over time what we were going to do, but
I have one question. One question for Luke? It's a quick one. Luke,
Yep.
Because you're a master ref, I want you to grade or scale in a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being awesome, 1 being completely horseshit. Grade WAL reffing.
oh,
Okay, so for what? Wow. Sorry, Bart. For what WAL wants, Bart does a fine job.
It's not Bart's fault. Bart is following commands. It's not Bart.
For what they want out of a referee, they're getting exactly what they want the referee to do. As far as when you look at implementing rules and following protocols, it's a little rough. But that's not what they're after. I mean, they're pushing the entertainment spectrum of the sport, and they're doing a good job with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even care so much or have that much of an opinion on the reffing. If I wanted to see anything changed in the wall setup, it would be go back to a standard elbow pad.
Absolutely.
There was nothing wrong with the 7x7 elbow pad. The only reason they went to a bigger elbow pad was off of recommendations of the gentleman who they were getting feedback from, and he wanted the table set up for him. And I've even seen interviews with Lorette and Neil Pickup where they talk about hey, go back to the 7x7 or extend it forward as well. Because right now the edge goes to the top roll in every match simply because they can go so far backwards to get the distance that they need. Go back to a standard elbow pad, and then the reffing becomes even less important in wall. And Gabi's just gone.
Gabi's gone. Like he's not even in the.
There he was. His question.
Yeah. Well, he'll have to watch it back to see the end of your answer.
Right. So the answer is that, from a technical aspect of reffing, it's pretty rough. For what they're actually doing, they're doing what they want. And I think wall has been good for our sport.
I agree. And I'm happy to be a part of it when the season gets going.
Yeah. I wouldn't turn down an opportunity to pull wall. Why would you?
No. Well, Gabi's going to come in for the goodbye. Here he goes.
Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about
That's
that.
okay. Well, are you guys ready to put a bow on this thing and call it a day at 90 minutes?
Absolutely.
I got one question for Chris if we got time.
Sure, we got time. What the
All right. And I was on the fence on if I even want to know the answer. What tier am I?
You're a tier 3.
Okay, so my son and I were talking about this, and that's what we decided too.
Yeah. If we're going, what tier are you as a master athlete, a master pulling in masters? You're a tier 4. But if we go general across the world, if we don't specify, just a blanket tier, based on everything, you're a 3. 4 is tough. Like I even consider myself 3 now. 4 is tough. 4 is elite pro. Ryan's a 4. He's a former world champion. So I would say 3.
Yeah, like I said, Wyatt and I were talking about it the other day, and I'm like, I read him the descriptions and everything, and he's like, you got to be 3. And I said, yeah, I agree. If you go top end, low end, I would say top end 3, but
yeah,
but not consistently 4 yet, although that's the goal, but not yet.
Yeah. 4 is a tough one. My left on its best days was a 4. 4 is tough. I mean, it's not like half the sport is sitting at 4. I think 90% of the sport falls into 1, 2, 3, and then you have the small percentage. Well, we're talking elite pros that can make money, go to tournaments, and pull out prizes and cash prizes from promoters at like Arnold Classic and stuff like that. These are your 4s, and a 5, we're talking about maybe 25 people on the planet. So right. I mean, 3 is no insult, right? I mean, 3 is still you're a pro, you're just not an elite pro. And I mean, you can argue terminology, but under my tier system, you're a 3 from what I've seen.
I'd take that.
I mean, you'd kick my ass right-handed, that's for sure. I wouldn't even touch your right, so it's no slight.
That was my last question.
Could you do me a favor though when we're done? You've had so much success in losing weight. When we're done, can you send Ryan some private message, some advice on how he should lose weight? Because I think he promised his daughter something and he's coming up short.
We already did that.
Ryan knows how.
I was the guy that went down to 240 and decided that I sucked at arm wrestling and went back up. But
yeah, fair enough.
Now, Chris, you lean more to the plant-based side, don't you?
I'm mostly vegan. If there's a big competition coming and I need to be at my strongest, I incorporate bio eggs, but I never ever buy meat. If someone invites me to their house socially, I'll eat whatever they present. But I haven't bought meat in a for maybe half a decade. And often I go months and months without no animal products. And I'm not creating some, environmental, reason for it or argument. My body, I've tried it all. I'm always analyzing how my body reacts to everything, all the environments. And I have a diet, that's high in protein, high in micro and macro, and it gets everything I need. And it doesn't include meat. Even back when I was at my strongest as an arm wrestler, not as just a general athlete, but I was not eating meat.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that, so many people correlate nutrition to, they treat it like a damn religion. And really it's about what's finding best for you, because the way we eat couldn't be more polar opposite. Mm-hmm. Because I'm basically a 0 carb person. I eat meat, I eat eggs, I eat a little bit of dairy. I don't really remember the last time I bought a vegetable. And I've been that way now for a couple of years and just have never felt better. All my blood markers have all improved. I eat red meat. Geez, in a 7-day week period, I probably eat red meat 15, 16 times.
Yeah, I can tell you that if I had biologically, if I can only eat nothing but chicken or high gluten carbs, I'd probably go with chicken, because there's nothing more detrimental to the body than high levels of high glycemic carbs and gluten. That's why when people cut out carbs, or at least your starches and shit, they feel awesome. They fucking feel great. They gain strength. They lose fat. It makes sense. My diet is high in carbs, but it's quinoa, it's brown rice, it's fruits and vegetables.
Higher level.
Yeah, it's low glycemic, highly dense kidney beans, stuff like that. And I think it's easy to get proper macros in your diet and create a smart diet high in protein, complex carbohydrates. But for me, my diet is built on is controlling inflammation, because it's better now. But I can tell you, in 2012, 13, 14, my elbows hurt so bad that I couldn't even get on the practice table. That's when I started looking into inflammation is massive. In our sport, it's more important. Controlling inflammation is more important because we pull more with our joints. Our joints and ligaments play more of a factor in our performance than most other sports. So for me, it's dairy is highly inflammatory. Refined sugar is the absolute fucking worst.
Right.
Dairy and a lot of grains, a lot of carbs cause inflammation, gluten, stuff like that. So yeah, I don't doubt your diet gave you success, and I just stay away from junk. I don't care what you're following, keto, whatever. Just don't eat fucking shit. And shit is, refined sugar, processed foods. If I stay away from refined sugar and processed foods, I feel awesome. Most people will. Just gotta stay away from the shit.
Yep.
You know, the key to being fit and feeling good: don't eat shit and try to move a lot. Like, it's not that complicated. People sell books and make millions on diets, and stop eating shit and
Fair point.
Yeah.
And move. Yep.
Yeah. Get do some, be physical. Get functional training, and that's it. It's not rocket science, but there's a lot of distractions out there, and there's a lot of shit food. And what are you going to do? But yeah, we've gone
Wrist
on
curls,
top.
pull-ups, and pop.
Yeah, grippers and Pop-Tarts. You can't go wrong.
Right. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. This has been good.
Yeah,
Thanks
man.
for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
Yep. Anytime.
All right.
All right.
Have a good weekend, guys.
See
Yep, you too.
everyone next week.